Hey guys, let me just get the volume right. All right, let me get some lights on. Hold on. Let's see how this looks. Not bad. Not bad. Move this up a little bit. Cool. All right, gentlemen, we have a note today. So, I need you to get out your packets and get into this note. It starts with the economic principle of supply and demand. There's a little bit more writing in this note than the past one. It's not all just to fill in. Like there's some definitions we have to copy. So I'll go through them slowly with you. Make sure we get all of it that we need. And always remember, you can pause this video at any time. So if you hit something, you just want to listen to it, and then you hit a part that you think is in the note, or I remind you is in the note, pause it, find the spot in the note, and fill it in. All right. So if you need to right now, pause me, get out to the economic principle of supply and demand in your packet, get your pen ready. Guys, this is a really, really, really short note today. I believe. I think this is a pretty short one. So it shouldn't take us too long. All right. First things first, you've probably heard supply and demand, or the principle of supply and demand, the laws of supply and demand used before. Maybe you've heard your parents say it, maybe you've heard it on television, maybe you know what it is. This might be a little bit of a review for you. The law of supply and demand is what guides our U.S. economy. It's what determines prices. It's what determines availability. It's what determines what people sell, how much they sell it for, where they sell it. All these things are guided by the principles of supply and demand. So let's talk about what each one of those things is. First, get rid of that. All right. Oh, that's already. Okay. When we talk about supply, you have to write this whole definition, guys. Okay, sorry. Supply is the amount of product available for sale. That means total amount that a company has of any product that it's able to sell. So let's use a practical example of that. Sony makes PlayStation. So the Sony company in the United States has factories, and I know we think of Sony as like a Japanese company, but there's factories here in the United States. They have factories that produce PlayStations. We're going to use that as our guiding example for the day today. Okay, the total number of PlayStations that Sony produces in the United States that it wants to sell, that is the supply. Okay, it's how much they have that's able to be sold, available to be sold. Two other words that go along with this are surplus. Surplus. A surplus is when we have too much of a certain product. In many cases, we think of a surplus, we think about like farm goods, like agricultural products, like you have a surplus of wheat, a surplus of corn, stuff like that. But businesses get into this problem as well. Let's take Sony and the PlayStations for another example. Sony might estimate how many PlayStations they think they need to make based on how many people want them, right? But maybe they overestimate and they end up making many more than they need, okay? A surplus is when you make too much of a certain product. This is not good for the business. This is very good for the consumer. Because if a company has too many of something, they need to get rid of them. And the best way to get rid of them is to the price, to lower the price. So a surplus, good for the customer, bad for the business. Then there is a deficit. A deficit is the opposite of a surplus. A deficit is when we have not enough of a product. Not enough of a product. This is the opposite. So this is bad for the consumer, bad for the person who wants to buy the product, good for the company. Good for the company. Let's use our Sony. Go back to Sony. Go back to PlayStations. If they don't have enough, like if they haven't made enough, that means a lot of people want them, and there aren't enough to go around. So in that case, they can take the price way up. All right. So if you have a deficit and you don't have enough of it, sometimes companies actually like that, because in that case, you can raise prices and make a lot of profit. So on this page of the note, on this top half of the note, you should have filled in 1, 2, 3 so far. You should have supply is this definition right here. That one right there. The amount of product available. Surplus right here, when you have too much of a product. And deficit right here, not enough of a product. If you have gotten those, you don't have to pause. You can continue right on. If you haven't, take a quick time out and pause me, fill in those definitions. Moving on, the other side of this supply and demand relationship is demand. We talked about supply. So, what is demand? The full definition of demand right here is, you got to write all of it. I know, I'm sorry. Is the willingness, can you see that? Oh, it's kind of tough to see. I'm going to get rid of that. Let's see. How's that? Better. The willingness and ability to purchase a good or service. So, sorry, got a text message on my Fitbit, Logan. Demand is the willingness and ability to purchase a good or service. So here's the thing: supply is the amount you have. Demand is the ability to buy it. And those two words are important: willingness and ability. Like, I have the willingness to buy my own private island in the Bahamas. Okay, I'm willing to do that. I don't have the ability to do that. You guys probably have the willingness to buy a lot of different things. Like, it'd be really nice to go buy a fancy sports car when you turn 16. You don't have the ability to do that. So it doesn't count as demand unless you can do both, unless you have the willingness and the ability. You don't have to copy that bottom section, okay? You just need this part to go on your definition of demand right here: willingness and ability to purchase a good and service. You with me? Let's roll. Oh, no, back to our example. Hold on. Sony and PlayStation in the United States. Sony makes a certain number of PlayStations to sell in the United States. The demand, this part of it, is how many people in the United States want to buy a PlayStation and are able to buy a PlayStation, have the means to buy a PlayStation, and by that I mean have the money, the scratch, the Skrilla, what I'm talking about. All right, moving along. Competition. Competition is when, see that? Yeah. Two or more companies compete for the same customer's business. Got to copy that whole thing down. We think about competition, like the classic example of competition would be like Coca-Cola and Pepsi. Like, you're competing in the same market for the same customer's business. You have people who want to drink soda, people who like cola, and Coca-Cola and Pepsi compete in the same market for the same customers. In our example, in the PlayStation example, who might be Sony's major competitors? Xbox, Microsoft, Xbox. That's probably it right now. That's the only two probably companies that compete in that market. You can have more. Wow, that ghost right on my ear is really weird. See it? You can have more than two companies. Okay, you could have a ton of companies, like car companies, for example. There's a ton of companies in competition. Think about all the cars that make pickup trucks: Ford, Dodge, Chrysler, Nissan, Toyota. They all make pickup trucks. So in that case, in that market, they're all in competition. They're competing for the same customer's business. Okay, now here's the thing about competition. This goes in the bullet right below that definition. Competition is good for you. It's good for the customer, because when there is competition, companies have to lower their price. It's the only way to beat the other company they're competing against. Think about it with our PlayStation example. If PlayStation and Xbox released a new gaming console on the same day, if everything was the same about them, they had the same graphics, the same games, the same capabilities, they could play Blu-rays and stream the internet and do all those things that all those systems can do now. What is the one way that Sony could outcompete Microsoft in that case? They could make their product $39 cheaper. They could make their product $1 cheaper. And there's a large number of consumers like you guys who, even though maybe one's a little better, one isn't a little better, whatever the case may be, competition creates lower prices, which means you will buy the product that is priced lower. So competition is always good for the customer. It creates lower prices. It creates better products. That's another thing. If you want to compete, all right, with multiple companies, you have to have a good product. Your product has to be comparable. So if Sony makes an adjustment, makes an upgrade to their PlayStations, Microsoft has to do the same thing to stay competitive. You know, if Sony's PlayStations can also stream Netflix and be your Alexa in the house and be all that stuff, Microsoft has to do the same thing to stay competitive. So competition is good for you guys as the customer. However, if you are the business owner, you don't like it. That's the second bullet. All right, you don't like competition as a business owner, because what that does is it lowers your profit. You make less money because you have to charge lower prices to compete with your customer, or with your other industries in your same market. So competition is always a good thing. When we eliminate competition, like when there's no competition in a market, that's really dangerous. Okay, that's what we would call a monopoly. You're going to get into that later in this unit, actually. We're going to talk about some companies that had a monopoly, and that means they're the only company in that industry. In that case, it's really dangerous because you can do whatever you want to the prices. So if Microsoft didn't exist, I mean, think about other small video game companies, Nintendo, and I don't know them, I'm super old at this point, but any other video game companies, if Sony PlayStation was the only gaming system in the world, they could literally charge whatever they wanted because you don't have any other system to buy or go buy. It's not as big a problem if it's a company like Sony, because theoretically you don't need a video game system to live, believe it or not. It becomes a big problem when it's like an oil company or a gas company, when the product they're selling, like gasoline for your car, like essentially you need that to exist in your daily life, with a few exceptions. But in that case, if you had a monopoly and you charge whatever price you want, people have to pay it. Like there's no other way around it. So competition is very important, and it's very, very good for you in this situation. All right, you need to have all that written down, guys. Here's your definition of competition. Here is the 2 bullet points that go under it. All right, if you need to at this point in time, pause me, copy that. All right, this side looks confusing. Let's go through it step by step. Okay. So here are your laws of supply and demand. All right, the first law of supply and demand. When supply is greater than demand, the price will decrease. So all you need to write in that line is decrease. That's all you have to. The price will decrease. So let's talk about that. When supply is greater than demand. So you have more of the product than people want. So Sony makes 5,000 PlayStations, but there's only 1,000 people who want them. Well, in order to sell the other 4,000, what are they going to have to do to the price? Because people don't really want it. So in order to make people buy it, they're going to have to take that price and drop it. So when supply is greater than demand, price will decrease. So I bet you can figure out the next one. When demand is greater than supply, price will increase. Price will increase. So let's think about that one. When demand, so there's more people who want the product than there are products available, the company can raise their prices. So Sony makes 5,000 PlayStations and 8,000 people want them. Sony can charge a very high price because a lot of people want it and there isn't enough to go around. So that is really good for the business, not for the people. And lastly, when demand equals supply, the prices stay the same. So if the supply and the demand are in perfect balance, the price will stay consistent, the exact same. Now, here's the part of that isn't really practical. That never happens, okay? Because all this, sorry, I keep kicking the table. Because all this stuff changes so frequently. The amount of people who want a product, the amount of product available, all these things. Supply and demand can be close, but rarely, if ever, are they the same. And if they are the same, they're not the same for long. And so this supply and demand kind of ebbs and flows and moves up and down and up and down. And that's what we call our economic market. When supply is higher than demand, the price decreases. When demand is higher than supply, the price increases. And this happens pretty consistently in all different markets at all different times of the year. I'm going to leave you with one final example. Okay? Think about any type of product that you can buy that is seasonal. All right, I'm going to give you an example here. A snowblower. All right, buying a snowblower. In June, when you go to Lowe's, they have a whole warehouse full of snowblowers. Nobody wants one in June. So in that case, in June at Lowe's, the supply of snowblowers is greater than the demand. So in order to sell a snowblower in June, they have to drop the price of it. They have to sell it for very cheap. However, if you're an idiot like Mr. Barrett and you buy a house in Webster and you wait until November to go buy your snowblower, which is what I did last year, like a real clown. Oh man, one of those things popped up. Yeah, close it. Sorry, guys. Nothing exciting. And you wait till November. Well, guess what happens in November? Everybody has bought their snowblower. there's a really high demand for the snowblower, and the supply has decreased. So that's this situation. There's high demand, there's low supply. So Lowe's can charge any price they want because I need that snowblower and there's not that many left and a lot of people need them. So they raise the prices. So supply and demand changes so frequently. It changes a lot of times depending on weather, season, product, all stuff like that. Now, here's what I'm going to have. That note is done. Okay, that note is done. Here's what I need you to do now. Flip, I believe it's 2 pages in your packet. 2 pages in your packet. And get to this sheet right here. All right, it's a picture of a bicycle on top. We got it. Now, I am going to read you the instructions, and then I'm going to tell you what to do beyond that. It says, below are some examples of products with price changes. In some instances, you need to decide what was the likely cause of the price change. In others, you have to decide the direction of the price change. Keep in mind what you have learned about supply and demand and fill in the blanks below. Okay, let's do a few of these together and then you can do the rest on your own. So, I'll do the first one with you. The first one says the product is a bicycle. Let me grab a pencil. Where's my pencil? I'm going to Sharpie so you guys can see it. All right. The first one, the product is a bicycle. It doesn't give us a cause. It just says the price change, and it says the prices are high. What might cause the price of a bicycle to rise? Think about it. Here's the thing about this sheet. There's a million right answers. A million right answers. Okay? So what I put, you don't have to put. And if I have something different than you, as long as yours makes sense, it doesn't matter. Now, I'll do the first few with you. What would cause the price of a bicycle to rise? We think about that. Could be seasonal, right? So like what season are you going to go buy a bike? Spring, summer. So it could be summertime. So it's summertime, all right? The prices of bikes went up. Why? Because there's a high demand for them. A lot of people want them, so they can raise the price. What are some other reasons prices of bikes went up? If you want to get really complex, maybe the price of gas went up and people don't want to drive their cars anymore, so everybody's buying bikes. Could happen, could be a thing. That would work. Probably the easiest is that it's summertime. Let's look at the next one. It's a pair of jeans. And it says there is a strike in the jean making industry. So jean prices went. If there's a strike in the jean making industry, they're making less jeans. So there is very little supply of those jeans. Because there is such a little supply, they can charge a higher price. So jean prices went up. Up, up, up. All right. Last one, and then I'm going to turn you loose. It's a pack of cigarettes. It's a pack of cigarettes. And the cause they gave me, it says cigarettes and lung disease are linked. So what's that going to do to prices of cigarettes? Let's think about it. If you own a tobacco company, you own a cigarette company, and an article is published, we know this at this point, but we didn't 30 years ago. We know that cigarette smoking and lung disease are linked, lung cancer are linked. Are people going to want to buy your cigarettes? So how do you make them keep buying cigarettes? How do you make them still purchase cigarettes? You have to do what to the prices? Because at this point, there's very little demand. There's very, very little demand. So you have to take prices go down. prices go down. All right? That is what is expected of you from the rest of that sheet. I am available for help. Ms. Zimmer is available for help. Ms. Adis is available for help. If you have questions, call us over. Do it quietly, okay? You can keep your headphones on, listen to your music, do what you got to do. Get this worksheet going. Call us over. We'll even do a couple more with you if you want us to come sit with you and do them with you. And when that is done, I will give you your final instruction for the day. All right, so when you're done totally with the sheet, raise your hand. I'll come over, check it, give you one last final instruction for social studies today. All right, gentlemen, adios.